Right, I'm going to put some new brake pads in this thing. So I'll start with the rears. Now what I've done off camera is I've took the cap off the reservoir for the rear brake and wrapped some cloth around the master cylinder, the reservoir bit, because obviously when I push the pads out to push the pistons in, that's going to rise, and if any spills over you want to be catching it. But to start, that clip there, if I can, where the screwdriver is now, just want to undo that and just unclip there. So just unclip it so it's loose and you can lift your brake line out. And then there's another clip just in front of it. So clip your brake line out of that. That little clip there sort of holds your wire for your ABS sort of speed sensor thing, whatever you want to call it. So just stick that to one side, and then basically I'll be undoing that wasn't very tight considering, neither was that. So just take the two bolts off that had your caliper on. And then basically what you want to be doing, or what I do should I say, is I just give it a light, just keeping an eye on my... Now what I was doing there was sort of just doing that with the caliper and then like that as well, but not hard enough that obviously I'm going to bend the disc. I mean, I'm not that strong anyways, but it just loosens the pads up a little bit so that when you come to lift your caliper off, you just need a little bit more to keep an eye on that level while I just pull that out a bit. And hopefully, what I'm hoping is that the caliper will come out under there, which it won't. So it looks like I'm going to be doing everything here. As long as you can see, that's the main thing. So there's a little spring clip on here. And it's just in your pin, holds your pin in. But what I want to do is just lift that up. Fucking hell, you won't believe this when I take these off. I'm just going to get a little bar just to pry these pads all the way back. I say a bar, I'm just going to use a screwdriver. Just check my level on that. What I've got for this is just a little syringe, and as the level rises in the reservoir I just suck some out of it in an attempt to not spill it everywhere. This, I don't know if I've mentioned, but this bike was meant to have been serviced just not long before I got it. whoever had it before me, they want to be fucking going somewhere else for a service. Right, so just undo your little retaining pin. I'm glad that wasn't tight. Just take your pin out. There's a little bit of, I don't know whether that's just rust or shit on there. I'll clean it up though. Once you get to that level, you can just pull your pads out. I'm just going to put these down here until I've got them both out. $3mm a pad minimum, I reckon. Be lucky if there's a fucking millimetre on there. And just to prove it wasn't just that's the two pads that I've just took out. You know, I bet, well, there's the marks with us when I was levering them out with the screwdriver. That is unbelievable, like unfucking believable that somebody would apparently have a service and they're fucking coming out with brake pads like that. So the next thing I'm going to do, put my airline here. I'm just going to blow some shit out of here. In fact, what I want to do, I'm just going to knock you off for a minute. I'll be back in a sec. Again, I just had somebody turning up then, that's why I stopped. Right, so what I'm going to do, this back wheel all needs cleaned, so I'm not bothered about it blowing in there. I'm just going to blow the shit out of this caliper. I'll grab my torch and just have a nosy in there. Basically just making sure there isn't a build up of shit anywhere that can catch on the pads. Stop them going in properly, and it's actually not too bad. Another thing I'm wondering about, I'm sure, I might be wrong, I'd have to check. Like on the fronts there's like a mesh that sits over the top. Sort of like a stainless plate with loads of little holes in it. I'm sure they're on the back as well, but I might be wrong on that, don't quote me on that one. And the reservoir has lifted, but not as much as it I would have thought it would have. But I'm going to be doing a flush as well on this, pushing through new brake fluid. It's something I would recommend anybody to do on a bike they've bought where they don't know the proper history of it. You know, this thing's, well, according to the Vance 9s it says it's a 15 plate, but it's actually a 14 on the logbook sort of thing. So if this came out in even at the end of 2014, you're looking at 8-year-old bike. And my fucking battery's going to go. Right, I'll be back in a sec. Right, I just noticed there that the battery was going to go, so I thought I'll just quickly change it. As I was saying, this is like an 8-year-old bike, and when you see things like that, you know, if they're going to let that get to that degree, how do I know that this brake fluid's ever been flushed and changed? You're meant to do it every 2 years. So it's going to get a flush through on the brake fluid. But I'll just grab the new pads. Right, I've got new pads for the front as well. I'll be putting new pads in. So, the EBC pads that I'm using. Get them out of the packet. Now I know that brake pad material on motorbikes isn't that thick. I think I've maybe mentioned this in another video. Compared to like a car, you know, cars are like 2 to 3 times thicker than, but just to compare, you know, there's a fucking lot more meat on that. Can't believe the state of them, like. Right, but I digress. So, pads, they can only go in one way on these ones. So, feed them into the little bit at the back, then keep hold of them. Otherwise they end up on the floor like that. So, feed them in, one on each side obviously, don't need to tell you how to suck eggs. Just make sure they're going all the way in. Because they can be stiff against the spring plate. When you're pushing them in, they sort of clip into place. I'll show you better on one of the front calipers because I'll be able to get you in at a better angle. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just pushing the pads apart so that they're actually out at each side. And I'm just going to rest that on there. I'm just going to get the brake pin. So what I'm going to do is I'll knock you off for a second. I'm just going to clean this brake pin up a little bit just to get the dirt off it, and I might put a little bit of lube on it. But right, I'll be back in a couple of seconds. Right, cleaned the pin up and I've put a bit of that waterproof grease stuff, just a real fine coating of it. Now believe it or not, there's a torque setting for this, 11.5 Newton meters. So I'm just going to get the torque wrench. Right, I'll just set this up. So it's 11.5. And that's that one done. Let's wind that back off. So that's your pads back in, and basically what you can now do is just put your caliper back on. So I'll also put this clip back on. It was holding the what do we call it, on the cable for the, set that one up properly and then just clip that in. So that's it all back together. I just need to torque this up, but I need to ratchet my big torque wrench out for that and a longer extension. And what I have forgot to do, which I should have shown you while it was off, I've just realised because I've just seen it, is put the pin clip back in, but I should be able to do that from here. So I'll just make sure it's going in its groove, and that's it, in. Simple as that. And all that happens there just stops. If for some reason that started coming loose, it'll only wind out so far, and then that pin will hit the caliper body and it won't be able to wind out any further. Don't forget to put that on, which I nearly did. Right, so I'll just knock it off for a sec and I'll go and get me other torque wrench. I'll be back in a minute. Right, you want to be torquing the mounting bolts up to between sort of 58 and 65 Newton meters, or if you want that in pounds, 43, where are we at here, 43 to 48, so that'll do for me. Right, let's take the torque off this, or should I say the pressure off it. So now that's back on, I'm just going to pump the pedal. So carefully, because this stuff fucking splashes out. Now that should be my pads back in on both sides. Yep. So now I've got it like that. The next thing is to get me kit out and get my lass in. She can tip some fluid into the reservoir while I bleed it out at this end. I have that auto bleeder. I'll just use that so you can keep that topped up. Now you're fine doing this as long as you definitely do not let that reservoir go empty. If you suck any air at all into this with the ABS, you're going to have to take it to the Harley shop and get them to bleed it up through, because they have to plug it in to get this. But as long as you do not let any air into the system, you can flush it through and it's absolutely fine. So I'll knock it off, go and get her sorted out and get me bit of me bleeding kit set up, and we'll come back and flush this system through with some fresh brake fluid. Then once that's done, we'll move to the front and we'll do the pads on the front, and then the same again, we'll bleed the front through, and that's the same again because it comes down from handlebars to this and then goes back up and then down to the brakes. So it's the exact same thing. Do not let your reservoir go empty up there, otherwise you've got to visit to Harley Davidson to redo this properly. Right, I'll knock you off for a minute, I'll be back soon. Right, I've pretty much just switched you straight back on. What I meant to say while I was filming a minute ago is the disc on this thing, there's not even a slight lip on it. So you've seen the state of them pads, and I think this thing has at some points had a new disc on the back. So they've put a new disc on. They haven't put new pads on at the same time, because you'd expect to feel something on this disc, the slightest bit of wear, you know what I mean, and it just feels smooth from the inside right out to the outside edge. It's just nice and smooth. So I just thought I'd mention that. And it's the same with the front brakes as well. The front brakes are really good, discs, rotors, whatever you want to call them, they're in really good nick, and I'm pretty sure on the front the pads are worn right down as well. So, right, I'll knock you off again and we'll get this flushing thing sorted. Right, we're going to do a brake fluid flush. As you can see here, I've got my vacuum pipe connected, which is part of a air-fed kit. So I'll set this off, and once I've set it off I'll then crack the bleed nipple. I've got my glamorous assistant at the other end, she's keeping the reservoir topped up with fluid. As I said earlier, you do not want air getting into the system, otherwise you're going to be paying Harley Davidson a visit to get the ABS redone. So I'll set this off and we'll see how it goes. Just crack it slowly to start with. Starts going down. I can see in the bottom of my bottle that it's actually sucking fluid through, but I want to put a decent amount through it to make sure it's clean all the way through. Your syringe up at the plunger end, so you're not pumping air in through that line. Out of camera view, I'm just topping up the syringe she's using. pumping air through with it, it makes it harder for you to keep that full. Right, we'll set this off again. Going down. Right, just let that compressor stop. That's better. Right, what we've just done there is we filled the syringe up. There was about 80 millilitres in each syringe full, and that's gone through the system now. I've tightened the bleed nipple up. With these kits, always tighten your bleed nipple before you take the pressure off the bottle, as in the vacuum. And I'll just nip that up. So that's tight. So that's flushed through. And as you can see, this was empty, this container. So that's sucked all the old fluid through. Now bear in mind it has to go from the rear master cylinder up to the ABS system, then down to the back brake. So put plenty through. What I'll do is I'll just knock you off and move you, and I'll show you the crack in the master cylinder. I'll just be a minute. Right, obviously rear master cylinder. You can see it's all nice clean fluid in there now, and if you can see just at this back edge, if I keep myself out of the way, you can see there's a line on there. That's your full level, and it's above that. So basically all I'm going to do is syringe some out. So just syringes come apart. We'll try that again. Just steady away. I'm just trying to go steady here because the syringes seems to be coming apart inside. The plunger's coming off the rubber bit. Let's just come off again, but that, as you can see, is down to its level now. So it's just a case of I'll pull that paper towel out and get some fresh stuff, and I'll have a clean up any bits that are spilled, and then we'll put the lid back on that, and that'll be the rear brake done. So I'll knock you off for now. We'll clean this up and then we'll make a start on the front brakes. Back soon. Right, just a quick one. This obviously I've got the cover back on. Make sure you give your cover a clean on the rubber side. Make sure there's no dirt on it or out like that. And the screws, you don't need to tighten them down mega tight. There's actually a torque setting for them. Now I don't use a torque setting, I just screw them down. The actual torque setting for it is like 1.7 Newton meters, which is nothing. So just be careful and don't over tighten your cover. Now the last thing to do, which I won't bother showing you, is just putting the little dust cap back on the bleed nipple on the caliper. So I'll do that and then we'll make a start on doing these front brakes.